I think it was watching a lot of their stories via social media. These people who had been through so much in their lives, and every time they spoke about it, it was the music that was helping them. It was this band, it was the lyrics, it was the music, it was the community, it was the energy that kept them going. And I just went, this needs to be out there.
Welcome back to Foos Files, the podcast for fans of the Foo Fighters. It's Dan here, back with you for episode 18 we're on now. So that's 14 weeks we've been doing this, which is just crazy how time flies. And guess what? The Foo Fighters are riding high in the charts. I kind of gave up following how the music charts worked a long time ago with the advent of streaming and everything else. But the one bit of Foo Fighters news from the past week or so is that today's song is on the rise in the various charts around the world. It's shot up to number 1 in the Billboard Rock and Alternative chart, which extends their record to 12 number 1s in that particular ranking, which is really good to see. So yeah, that's the one bit of news really from the past week or so in the Foos camp. On to this week's episode, we've got an interview with an author who's written and published not just one, but 2 books about the world of Foo Fighters fandom. But the really interesting story behind it all is that, as you'll learn, she knew nothing of the band until a chance encounter with the online Foo community. So her name is Rachael Gilliver, who comes from the East Midlands here in the UK, not a million miles away from where I live, and she set up her own company to publish the 2 books Send in the Congregation, volumes 1 and 2. I've personally got a lot to thank Rachael for because I kind of stumbled upon her books when I was in the initial planning and researching stage for this podcast. So I knew straight away I needed to get her on here as a guest. And since then we've kept in touch. She's helped me join quite a few dots in terms of the fan community, but also just been a really big supporter of what I've been trying to do with the podcast generally because she's been in the same position as me. And through her books, Rachael has told the story of dozens of Foo Fighters fans from around the world. And now she finally gets to share hers in full. So, welcome to the podcast, Rachael Gilliver, the author of Send in the Congregation. Rachael, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm doing grand. Thank you very much for having me on.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. So we're here to talk about the 2 Foo Fighters themed books that you've written. So do you want to start first of all telling the listeners a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, my name's Rachael. I live just south of Leicester and I run a little publishing house called Roswell Publishing. And we tend to publish the weird and wonderful along with music-themed books.
Yeah, I was going to say because you've got 2 volumes of those aforementioned Foo Fighters books, Send in the Congregation 1 and 2. But
yep,
they're not your typical genre, are they necessarily?
Nope, they're absolutely not. So I started off Roswell Publishing as a way to publish those 2 books. And we published the 3rd one in 2019, which focused on Megadeth instead of the Foo Fighters. And it was going to be a kind of series of those books focusing on different bands. But unfortunately, the pandemic put paid to that. It was one of those things that was a bit of a flash in the pan. It was very popular at the time, but as we went into the pandemic and out the other side, you just couldn't get people's attention long enough to be able to do those kinds of long form interviews. So I swung a little bit and started to focus on other genres I'm interested in. So we publish quite a few weird fiction books. So we've got books on UFOs and various historical events and things like that. And then non-fiction, which would otherwise not be picked up by publishers.
Your website describes it as the 3 Ps. Do you want to tell us what the 3 Ps are?
The three P's. So the three P's stand for pagan, paranormal, and poetry.
Wow. Well, the UFOs is a nice segue into why we're here today to talk about the Foo Fighters, because as the majority of people know, the band name is inspired by UFOs.
It is, and that's entirely where I started. So the whole thing with Sunday in the Congregation started in 2014, and I had no clue who this band were. The reference I knew to Foo Fighters was the World War II reference. I'm a huge ufologist. I have a massive interest in UFOs. Always have done. I've had several sightings throughout my life. Um, and I remember trying to get tickets for some event in the summer of 2014. Couldn't get them. So I wrote several blog posts about it, kind of giving some advice to the industry, advice that I now know isn't needed, and the issues that we see with ticketing are by design. And at the same time, Foo Fighters fans were doing a campaign about ticket scalping. I think it was around the time that they were doing the Small Sonic Highway shows, and people were trying to get tickets, failing to get them, and they decided to do a campaign on it. So they found my articles on Twitter, and it was the closest I think I've ever been to being doxxed, because suddenly there were people in my inbox. There were people I'd never heard of, were tagging me in things, were tracking down my personal social media profiles. So I'm not on social media under my real name. They were managing to track those down. They were following my Twitter, following my Facebook, following my website. And eventually, I think it was about October 2014, I started being added into groups on Facebook for a band called the Foo Fighters. And I had no idea why I was there or why they wanted to speak to me, but they came up and went, "Okay, you've written these articles on ticket scalping. It's really great. Would you give us a hand with our campaign?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course I can." So I ended up writing some stuff for them, helping them get it out there. And they said, "Oh, do you like the band? Are you into the music?" And I was like, "I've got no clue who you're on about. Absolutely no clue who you're on about at all." And they're like, "Seriously? They're like the biggest rock band in the world." And I'm like, it was like straight over my head. It was like Concord straight over my head. And so they said, "Oh, what kind of music are you into?" So I said, I'm a metal girl at heart. I love my heavy metal." So the first album they gave me to listen to was Wasting Light, and it went from there.
And so you've just had this bizarre coincidence where you're writing about ticketing. There's this kind of anti-ticket scalping thing going on. So how do you go from that to suddenly realising you're going to write a book?
They were so sweet to me. These fans were so sweet to me. They took me in, a complete novice. I had no clue who this band were. They sent me gifts. They included me in so much stuff. They included me on nights out. They helped me get tickets to go see them at Wembley in 2015, which obviously never happened in the end. And I remember saying kind of December 2014, January 2015, I said, one day I'm going to write a book about you guys. And that came about in June 2016. I ended up in Cardiff, and the admins of one of these big Facebook groups lived there. We ended up going out for coffee, and they said to me, "So, Rach, what's your next plan? What are you going to do next?" And I said, "Well, you know what? I might write that book about the fans that I said I'd do." And they offered me everything. So they said, "We will help you get the word out there. You can take over our website. You can put it on there. We'll get it in all the other groups." And so I did. I wrote a pitch, I think about July, August 2016. I wrote a pitch just to kind of get a feel for the water and how many people would want to do it. Posted it in this group, and within 48 hours, I think I had 100 people in my email saying, "I'll do it. I'll do it. You can come and talk to me. I'll do it." And so it went from there to building a small recording studio in my home using a Zoom H4n, which I was able to plug into my mobile, and then I was able to just take it anywhere with me and interview people either via phone or in person. And yeah, I think by June, July, August 2016, by the end of August, I had all the interviews for the first book.
And how many interviews are there altogether?
I think in that first book there's about 25, 30 interviews, I think, and they were all audio interviews as well. So yeah, 95% of them were done via phone and then transcribed.
Yeah. It's an incredible volume of work, but the story itself, that you've kind of almost been dragged into a Facebook group that you didn't really intend to be or knew nothing about, and then in the blink of an eye you're suddenly writing a book. Can you remember exactly the moment where you went, actually, these people have got a story that's really worth telling?
I think it was watching a lot of their stories via social media. These people who have been through so much in their lives, there were so many health problems, mental health problems, people who'd been in and out of hospital, who'd had failed relationships, and it was every time they spoke about it, it was the music that was helping them. It was this band, it was the lyrics, it was the music, it was the community, it was the energy that kept them going. And I just went, this needs to be out there. This needs to be in the world. This was the point when I think we were starting to see the world change. I don't want to bring politics into it, but politically you were starting to see it get a little bit darker with what was happening stateside. And I went, this needs to be out there. People need to have an outlet to tell their stories that isn't on social media, that the everyday person can go into the bookstore or to Amazon or wherever, pick this book up and find out that there are real people who are going through the same things that they've been through and have survived them. But the crux of it is that there is a band that helps them do that.
Yeah, that's amazing. And as a fan myself, I mean, I'm a fan of many bands. I don't think there's another band that brings that connection the way that the Foo Fighters do.
Yeah.
But you describe the books as a love letter by Foo Fighters fans to the band, and both volumes are packed full of fan stories written in the first person. I've read them both, and they are a mix of fun, celebratory, absolute devout loyalty, but then also, as you mentioned, some really poignant and emotional stories at times as well.
Yeah, and some of them were just really difficult to listen to. I remember there was one I did. I'm not going to mention him. And we were talking on the phone, and there were some parts of it that I had to mute my audio because I was just in tears. And I told him at the end before we hung up. He said, yeah, there were parts you were really quiet, and I said, yeah, I'd had to mute my audio because I was just crying. Because of everything that you'd been through in your life, and you'd gone to the brink several times, and every time this band did something and pulled you back. You found yourself in the community, talking to people, and just stepping away from that edge. And I said, I found that amazing. And I said, this is why we're doing it. And I think he was the last one that I spoke to. So I don't know if he's the last one in the book, but he was the last one I spoke to for it.
Yeah,
for the first book.
Absolutely. Well, I'll let you on a little secret. Some time ago, when I had the idea for this podcast, it was actually born out of me thinking about the Foos, particularly in the wake of Taylor Hawkins' passing.
Yeah.
And again, about the strength of that connection between the Foos fans themselves and the fans and the band. And so that was part of the idea for this podcast. And I'd been dipping in and out of social media groups as well. And so I thought I'd start exploring this a little deeper. And that's actually how I came across your book. And because you've kind of been there and done it with people from, the UK, the US, Australia, just about, you've covered just about every corner of the world, haven't you?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, it was madness. Absolute complete madness. I mean, I changed my entire schedule of living for about 3 or 4 months. My calendar was a mess of just, it was like, on a Friday, Saturday nights, I would do kind of US and Australia so that I could sleep when I needed to. And then during the week, I was doing the UK. And then, I had some of them coming through on email. There were several people who they desperately, desperately, desperately wanted to do it, but they just couldn't pick the phone up. They couldn't speak on the phone. So the second one we did was done pretty much entirely by email to give them that chance to be in it rather than having to speak to me on a phone.
Yeah, sure. And I know it took a hell of a long time from start to finish to piece it all together. So
Yeah.
do you reckon it was about 2.5 years, did you say?
So the first one was about 2.5 years. And a lot of that was me finding my feet and working out how to do it. And, how am I going to do this bit? How am I going to do that bit? And part of it was also setting up the publishing side of it as well, because I pitched it to probably near on 200 publishers. And they were coming back to me and saying, the only way that this is going to be published is if you get a forward by Dave Grohl in there. And I was like, yeah, that's not happening. I was like, yeah, that's like, dream on. That is not happening. So I sat down, did all the research, started working and worked out how to put it together in a physical book form. And at the time, so we use print on demand. Which is partly a cost issue, it's partly an environmental issue. It keeps our carbon footprint down. And at the time, the only place that did this print on demand was a single printing company in somewhere in America. I want to say Cincinnati. And so you would have to make all the proofs up, send it over to them. They would then print the copy and ship it to you. And it took about 6 weeks. But you did not have a preview of what your book looked like on a screen until your physical copy arrived.
Wow.
Yeah.
So if you spotted anything in that kind of draft, so to speak, you'd have to do it all again, basically.
Yeah, exactly. You would. Exactly all again. And it's why on some of the chapters, I think the little UFOs at the end aren't quite in the right place. Because, it was just a back and forth for like several weeks at a time. That company then got bought out by Amazon, so it's a lot quicker now. So you do see the proof on the screen, and then you approve it there and then, or reject it before, obviously, you start printing. So it's now a matter of hours rather than weeks. And I should go back in there and fix that, but I haven't got around to it yet.
I'm sure not many people will have noticed that, so...
They won't have noticed the little things that aren't where they should be. Yeah.
So, what do you think it is about the Foos and their music then that resonates so deeply with individuals, as you found in your conversations?
You know what? It's like along the journey, I really did fall in love with them. I haven't travelled as far as some people have to see them. I know that there is so many people out there that they will do at least one date in every country they do on a tour, or if not more. Which I find just like, my brain can't comprehend that. I think it's incredible, absolutely incredible that they do that. But I've travelled to see them. I've seen them in Germany. I was supposed to see them, I think were they playing Holland? I think I was supposed to see them there. But the problem was I sustained a back injury about 18 months ago. And so I've not been able to travel. The thing with the Foo fans is they're the people that have been visiting me and making sure I'm okay.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah. So there were 2 of them visited me just this past weekend, and I've got another one coming next weekend, and they're the people that have been stopping in and making sure that I'm okay, which is amazing. But no, in regards to the band, I do love going and seeing them. I really do, because I love that energy. And I love that feeling of community that's there. And even though my own kind of background in music is heavy metal, I'm like, actually, yeah, I really, really do enjoy this music. It gives me a whole other way to move and a whole other way to sing and a whole other way to connect with people. And it's the one band that like my whole family have been to see together. So my brothers and I have all been together. We've dragged my dad along to at least one show. Um, and then we're waiting now for my niece and nephew to get a little bit older. They're currently 5 and 2, so we're waiting, for them to get closer to 10, and then we'll start taking them as well.
I know you mentioned there were some stories in the book that you kind of really found difficult to listen to, just because of how emotional they are. But are there any in particular that you want to highlight that either surprised you or moved you in any particular way that you do want to talk about that really stand out?
I think in I think it's the first book, there is a guy called John who you may or may not have spoken to yet, who his interview took me 8 hours.
Wow.
8 hours. So he plays in the Foo Fighters tribute. And
is this the Foo Fighters FU?
Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't interviewed John yet, but I'm planning to, yeah.
All I'm going to say is make sure you've got a lot of coffee.
Okay.
Because, we talked for on and off about 8 hours over about 2 or 3 weeks. And it literally took me months to transcribe, because the way I was doing it was roughly about 15 minutes a day. And so I had a control pedal for my Zoom to stop and start it. And so that's what I was having to do. But because of the length of it, just 8 hours, I was like, this is mad. And I think the whole interview is in there as well. I didn't edit any of it out. And then there's I think she's in book 2, is a lady called Elaine. And I hold these books now because of her, because she passed away 3 years ago now. Her dream was to come to the UK to see the Foos play. She lived in Australia. And she was just a huge supporter of not just the books, but the company itself, and what we stood for and what we did. She was just always there, just cheering us on every step of the way. She was brave enough to be interviewed for the second book, which came out in July 2019, and she passed away in November 2021.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So those books are now part of her memory, and that was another reason I did them, was because I said to people, we do not know what is going to happen to our digital lives. Even 20 years from now, I mean, we're already seeing it where some social media sites are going down and it just takes everything with them. And I said, we have zero clue what the future holds and where our stories are going to be. I said, at least this is a physical, tangible product that people 100 years from now will be able to pick up. So that was another reason for doing it, was being able to archive that human side of it, like the Foos say, the human element of music. Being able to keep it somewhere safe, so it's archived in libraries around the world.
I think it's that. I say a moment in time's probably not quite the right phrase for this, because you're documenting. There's different time frames really of people's loves of the band. You've got some people who've been there from the start. You've got some people who are late to the party. And then I think if you were to do the book now and what's happened with the Foos since, and with Taylor, and how that's brought out different emotions in people and everything like that, I think the stories would, those emotions would be flooding out even more, wouldn't they? Really, that's what I'm trying to say.
100%, absolutely. And in the wake of Taylor's death, I was asked if I would do another version, and I said, I tentatively went, let's leave it several months. I want to see how I feel, because obviously I may not be the biggest Foo Fighters fan, but as everyone says, you are a fan. It doesn't matter whether you've been to 100 dates or you've been to one. You are a fan. But yeah, it hit me really hard as well, and I said, let me have a few months. Let me see how I feel by the summer. We got to the summer of 2022, and I just said it's not the right time to do it. I want to let that kind of year pass before I even start looking at doing that. So it was the summer of last year. I put a post up and people said, yeah, we'd love that book, we'd love to be involved. However, as we said earlier, it's a bit more difficult to do those books now because people's lives have changed so much, even in kind of the 5 years since the second one came out. The pandemic changed so much. So I have got a Google form online for people to fill out, answer questions and things like that. And I'm trying at the minute to reevaluate it and go, okay, how can I get this so it's easier for people to work with? Because I'd basically said to people, right, you have got a space here, a blank space, to write 1,000 words or 10,000 words about Taylor, what he meant to you, and all of that. The thing I realise is for some people that is insanely difficult to do. So you have to structure its questions and then pull it from there. And people do come back and ask me and go, are you going to do the Taylor book? Are you going to do the Taylor book? And, I've said, oh, I've got a million and one other things going on. I've got, 6 books that I've got to finish. I've got my day job. And it's like, I'm currently like in and out of hospital quite a bit as well. So I'm like, let me kind of get to a place where my life is settled again. And then we'll start hopefully working on that so that we can have a book that captures those memories of Taylor and keeps them there forever. And again, that will be another book that will go off to be archived.
Yeah, it's one that with something like that as well, you're carrying a bit of a weight on your shoulders, aren't you? Because it's just got to be done right, hasn't it? And
yeah,
for obvious reasons.
Absolutely, 100%. There is, like you said, it has to be right. It has to be worded right. And then I look at myself and I'm like, am I the person to do this? Have I got it in me to write that introduction that is going to hit just right? That people will be able to see themselves in. They'll be able to see the band in. They'll be able to see Taylor in. I'm like, can I do that without overthinking it, getting in my own head, thinking I'm a failure and stuff like that, and trying to create something that would please, well, I don't know if please is the right word, but give everybody that vessel to contain their memories in, because like you said, it's a huge thing that happened. I remember it as clear as day. I got up weirdly early that day and saw a message on my phone from a friend in Australia who she'd been trying to call for a couple of hours. And so I called her back and she said, you're up. And I said, yeah, I had to get up. I got up and she said, look, I need to tell you this before you check social media, that Taylor Hawkins has passed away. And that was just at 5:30 on a Saturday morning, and it's like, wow. And then for people to say, can you please write this book? I'm like, I've got to contain that grief that I felt at 5:30 on a random Saturday morning in 2022 into these pages and make sure that everybody else's grief is there as well. It's like, how do you do that, and make it just perfect for everyone?
Well, as a creative person, I'm sure you'll know when the time is right and when it feels right, and you've got the biggest community behind you, the most supportive one to back you up with it. So I'm sure you'll know when you know.
Hopefully, we'll see.
Yeah.
It might be the end of this year. It might be sometime next year. I think now, as the time moves forward, I think that yes, the weight is still there, the grief is still there, and I know that some people have also stepped away from being in that community because of what happened. But yeah, I think, as the time eases on, it might be a little bit easier to put together. So we'll see what happens with it. I mean, because obviously the first two books were a lot of fun. That's what they were meant to be. They were supposed to be fun. They were supposed to be a little bit silly. Obviously, as you've seen, there's like a letter in the first one at the front, saying this is who we are. This is what we've done. They're doing one on Taylor. Oh yeah, it'll get there. As you said, it will get there eventually.
Well, keep us posted, and you've got everyone's full support, I'm sure, when the time comes. I got two stories, actually, that really stood out for me, one from each book that I was going to mention. And again, there's a bit of a mixture of the A, the goodwill, and B, the sort of slightly quirky. And the first one, from book number one, I'm a bit of a guitar nerd, and there was a guy whose name I can't remember, but he managed to get backstage at one of the small shows the band were doing, and he'd built his own version of Kurt Cobain's Jag-Stang guitar to give to Dave. And I think Pat Smear spotted him and said, "Look, that's Kurt's guitar," and that just blew my mind, because to build any kind of guitar, well, it takes some wizardry to take on Kurt Cobain's, and then to go to the effort of actually trying to get it to Dave Grohl himself. Yeah. That's quite something. So that was one story I absolutely loved.
Yeah, I think, was that Nick? I think it was a Nick or a Nico. I'm too far away. I'm hooked into the computer. My copy is the other side of the room. I should have picked it up and brought it over with me. But yeah, I remember that story and just being like, I don't even want to know how you managed that. Yeah. But I was like, hats off to you, son.
Yeah, that's
incredible.
That's one of the coolest things I've ever heard of a fan of anything, whether it be music, sports, anything that anybody's done for one of their heroes. The other one I absolutely thought was great, which again, it's just that strength of kindness and goodwill from the Foos community, really. There was a guy who, I think he was from somewhere in Europe. It might have been Oslo in Norway, and he came over to London for a show. He had his bag and all his belongings stolen, and he was able to make contact with some Foo Fighters fans via one of the online groups. Found a meetup that was going on, and they basically rallied round him and helped him put his life back not put his life back together, but just sort him out, save his trip, make sure he still had a brilliant time, make sure he'd got everything he needed. And again, that kind of illustrates some of that experience that you've talked about when you got brought into this fold, really.
Yeah, I remember him as well, and he's somewhere on my Facebook. Yeah, his was just another insane story, and but yeah, this is what we were seeing day in, day out. Like you said, with just random people, would bring you into the fold, would help you out, would get you to where you needed to be, would put you in touch with the people you needed to be in touch with. And it went from there, and it's, in a way, you kind of find yourself passing it on as well, so you pay it forward a bit more. For example, when I moved house a couple of years ago, I couldn't keep all of my Foo Fighters collection. I mean, it was massive at the time. It was huge. And it did take up like one wall of a room. So I was like, okay, I'm going to pass this on. And some of it has gone to people in the UK. Some of it has gone abroad. And it was just kind of almost a way of saying thank you to people as well. I've got to move. I can't keep it. I want it to stay with somebody that will appreciate it. So yeah, I'm like, I can't quite help anybody at the minute, but I can do this for you. And I still get people coming to me going, I want to publish a book, I want to do this, I want to do that, how do I do it? And I'm like, okay, I can help you. So yeah, there's just still that community of paying it forward there.
That's brilliant. It's just a long-lasting thing that's kept on going. And as you said, it's been an incredibly long and rewarding process doing these books. But I know you had some really nice feedback too, and including there was like some recommendations in various magazines, like American Songwriter, was that right?
Yeah, we got featured in American Songwriter magazine. We've been featured on several blogs as well. I know that people have actually got copies of the books to the Foos themselves.
Really?
Yeah, so there was one, I think it was it early 2019? It was when Chris Shiflett came and did a tour over here. And I think he ended up with like 2 or 3 copies of the book because people took it to him and went, "Have you seen this?" And the first person that did that to him, he went, "No." He says, "I've not seen this, but this looks incredible." Haven't heard from him, but yeah, this person managed to get a photograph of him with the book, sent it to me. I don't know if I've still got it. I will have somewhere on one of my hard drives. And he said, "Yeah, I've never seen this book before, but this looks insane." And she explained the principle behind it and the idea behind it, and that it wasn't a biography of them. It wasn't a biography of the band. It was the fans' stories of how the music has changed their lives. And so yeah, he had 2 or 3 copies, which was pretty incredible. I know other people mailed copies to 606. I think other people took copies on tour with them to try and get to the band. It's like, I think one got to Yeti, the drum tech, as well. I'm like, this is just mad. Like, my life, 2018 into 2019 was just insane. It was just mental.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
So Dave could have opened this book and gone, "Oh man, I wish I'd have written the foreword for this."
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It was actually quite funny because July 2019. I don't know why these days are just imprinted on in my brain. I remember it was actually, I think it was Independence Day. I was out walking. It was a beautiful day, and I could feel my phone ringing. And I was like, okay, so it'd ring and it'd stop. It'd ring and it'd stop. It'd ring and it'd stop. So eventually, I stopped, took my phone out, and there was just like 10 missed calls on my phone. And I was like, okay, what's going on? So I called. There was like 4 different people who phoned me. So I called back the last person that called me, and she said, "Are you sitting down?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm sitting on a wall. Why? What's up?" She said, "You need to check the Foo Fighters website." So I checked their website, and we don't know if the books had influenced them or what had happened, but they were asking for people to send them their fan stories of the band.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was mad, and it's like, part of me was just like, fair play to you lads. The other part of me was just like, I can't believe they've done that.
Yeah.
It's like, it was just like, just mental. I'm like, I can't believe that this is my life at the moment. And I'm sure it would have continued if we hadn't, had a pandemic in 2020. But yeah, the pandemic was a nice break. I feel like I should be getting back into this now.
Well, you never know. There's still time. So
There is.
yeah. So how you briefly alluded to this then? How quickly was it, and you realised there was going to be a second book? You'd done volume 1. Was it just a case of, well, I'm just so oversubscribed and overwhelmed with stories, so we've got to do a second one?
Pretty much. So the first one came out in October 2018. And pretty much instantly there were people in my inbox who were saying, I wanted to be in the first one, I didn't get a chance to do it. And the thing was, I'm quite lenient, and I gave people like 3 or 4 chances. If they didn't pick up the phone or weren't replying to emails. There were a couple of people that were losing the email questionnaire, which I would send out as like as a prep for them, so they knew what they were going to be asked. So I'd send it out again, and yeah, I had several people go, I wanted to do it, I really wanted to do it, I'll do it this time, I promise. I was like, okay, we'll do a second one. So we started the second one in January 2019, and that was finished and published by August 2019. So that one was a lot quicker than the first one was. A heck of a lot quicker. Yeah. But yeah, it was a case of, people they wanted to tell their story. They'd read the first one, or they'd missed my deadlines to the first one, and wanted to get their tale out there. And I'm like, I'm going to give, that's what I'm here for. I'm going to give you a chance. And so yeah, we did the second one, and I'm like, I'm at that point now of, do I put them both into a single volume. And put it back out there and just say, look, this is, editions 1 and 2 combined. So if you already have them, you're grand. If you don't, pick it up. Feel free to pick it up.
Great stuff. So we've chatted about the 2 Foos inspired books, and you mentioned earlier you published another one shortly after, I think, Sending the Congregation, Skin of Our Teeth, which is stories of Megadeth fans, the metal band. So
yep.
Are there any other bands or artists on the horizon where you think, yeah, it'd be great to follow this model and explore their fan culture?
I'd love, and I tried to do this at the start of COVID, was I'd love to do Metallica. 100% would love to do a book on their fans, because I've somehow, from the Foos, ended up kind of in a couple of Metallica groups as well, and I see a lot of the same similarities. So yeah, I'd love to go in and explore their fans and talk to them in the same way, and hopefully put together an edition about them as well. But we'll see. We'll see. I'll get there eventually, hopefully.
Excellent. Well, we'll watch this space for that one.
Thank you.
So great. Well, it's been brilliant to chat to you, Rachel. And as I say, your books have brought me and lots of other fans a great deal of pleasure. And you've also helped me connect quite a few dots as well in terms of people I've had conversations with this podcast, a couple that we've spoken about before we recorded as well, about some of them are mutual friends of yours and whatnot. So yeah, thanks for that too.
Oh, you're welcome. I saw Kim last weekend, and she said, "Have you spoken to Dan yet?" I was like,
"Oh, Kim Hearn."
Dan? Yes. I was like, "Which Dan?" She says, "Podcast Dan." I said, "No, not yet. I'm talking to him next Friday."
Yep, and Kiri in Australia as well.
Yeah, Kiri. Good egg Kiri is. So love her to bits.
Yeah, excellent. Before you go, then, do you want to just remind people how they can get hold of the books?
So you can find Sending the Congregation is available on Amazon. This is volumes 1 and 2 are available on Amazon via our website, roswellpublishing.co.uk. Or if you want to support your local independent bookseller, you can have them ordered into your bookshop.
A big thanks once again to Rachel for sharing her story of how the books came together. And if you want something that really drives home how much this band means to people, then I really do recommend that you check them out. And thank you once again for listening to Foos Files. If you're enjoying the show, please don't forget to hit the follow or subscribe button wherever you get your podcasts to ensure you never miss an episode. Have a great week, and I'll see you next time.